Right, so have Israel hit such a height of peak stupid now, such dizzying peaks of insurmountable idiocy, that they think by saying there are no Christians in Gaza, we'll all believe it. Literally on the doorstep of the Holy Land as it is for Christians, and when picked up on this point for being the abject nonsense it is, saying, oh, well, they must have been Hamas operatives if our forces shot them. Well, this has all flared up in response to the shooting of two Christian women who stepped out of a church, mother and daughter, killed by snipers as one went to the loo and upon hearing shots killed the other as they went to their aid. Following this appalling and clearly not targeted Hamas shooting, targeting two women sheltering in a church, the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem responded to this report by ridiculously claiming the two women couldn't have been sheltering in a church because there are no churches in Gaza. Well, I've got some news for her. Right, so let's dive straight into what the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem said here. Fleur Hassan-nahoum, she's called, and she was speaking on LBC to Nick Ferrari, and she said on making the case for Israel's right to defend itself, because they do love to talk about that, and the rejection of any notion of a ceasefire, which is questionable given Netanyahu is back negotiating again. She said, if a ceasefire means the return of the hostages and the dismantlement of a genocidal regime that has stated that they're going to attack us again, then everybody would be in favour of a ceasefire. But if a ceasefire means that we're just going to keep them quiet for a bit until they attack again, then it's Israel's obligation to defend its citizens and destroy that threat, don't you think? Well, if it was me, I'd be very cautious about throwing around terms like genocidal regime and others right now. 24,000 dead Gazans, 10,000 of them are children, almost 100 journalists dead, which is more than died in 6 years of World War II and more than died in the 20 years of the Vietnam War, all within the space of 2.5 months. The scale of death and destruction at Israel's hands is unparalleled in its indiscrimination. And still they say, not our fault. Let us defend ourselves. Why are you picking on us? This is Hamas. Will you condemn Hamas? It is not self-defense when you are occupying this land and its people, and you complain about them retaliating against that. Most of those that died in Israel on October the 7th appear to have died at Israeli hands as well under so-called Hannibal directives, showing how little human life is frankly valued by Israel and frankly showed how much they are bullshitting us. But sure, let's just blame everything on Hamas because that makes things so much easier, doesn't it? Nick Ferrari moved on from this, though, onto the matter of the two people shot in the church. And this is where Ms. Deputy Mayor jumped the shark a bit. He asked her, why is it necessary, it is reported, to start shooting having snipers outside a church? Hamas are using churches as a basis of operation now, are they? That's the usual sort of response we expect to get for the destruction of civilian infrastructure from Israel and from the IDF. We've become used to getting this from Israel, haven't we? But not this time. Hassan-nahoum responded differently, and she said, I saw the reports this morning. The church? There are no churches in Gaza, so I'm not quite sure where the report is. Well, Ferrari cut her off at this point, because this was straight out of the bovine bottom bullshit. I'm sure any report you read, if indeed you read any report at all, who's to believe you, will have very clearly used the word church. These two women, mother and daughter, were Christians sheltering in a church. I'll come back to Gazan churches in a moment, though, because Ferrari had interrupted her and chipped in, retaliating by saying, there's a Catholic church in there, isn't there? Well, there's more than that, actually, Nick, but sensing uncertainty from him, he'd asked a question. Maybe he wasn't sure. Fleur Hassan-nahoum jumped back in, quite confidently, saying, yeah, unfortunately there are no Christians because they were driven out by Hamas. Again, it's not true. Why are you saying this? What possible reason could there be for denying the existence of Christians in Gaza? It seems very hard to prove, but Ferrari was back on firmer footing this time as he responded, saying, there are Christians because I spoke to an MP yesterday who has family members in the church who are Christians. Yeah, Lib Dem MP Layla Moran, her mother having come from Jerusalem, very much a Christian, and Moran has family in Gaza as well, some of whom have been killed. Moran considers herself to be British Palestinian. What say you to that then, Ms. Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem? Well, I don't know what happened. I don't know who was attacked. I didn't see the report. Well, hold the bus here a minute. You said on radio within the last 60 seconds, this was only a 1-minute video clip, within the last minute that you said you had seen the report on the two women in the church. But this has been the biggest problem with Israeli spokespeople throughout these latest atrocities, hasn't it? None of them could lie straight in bed. They lie like rugs. They make Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer look as honest as the day is long. Look, Gaza, Palestine, Israel, all of it comprises what 3 of the largest religions in the world, all related to each other, consider to be the Holy Land. It is the core of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So let's not pretend Christians don't live throughout the entire area just as Jews and Muslims do, albeit these days in smaller numbers. Because they absolutely do. The Christian population of Gaza makes up roughly 1% of the population. When the population is 2.2 million people, that's still an awful lot of people. And this is why there are no fewer than 3 churches throughout Gaza. The Gaza Baptist Church, St. Porphyrius Church, a Greek Orthodox church, and the Holy Family Church, which is the Catholic Church being referred to here. And all of them are in Gaza City in the north of the Gaza Strip. But this is perhaps why Fleur Hassan-Nahoum thought there were no churches in Gaza. Perhaps she assumed there were none left, with Israel razing the north of Gaza to the ground. Well, it's not necessarily an inaccurate assumption. One of the earliest targets which had people sitting up and suddenly thinking, hang on a minute, this isn't targeting Hamas, and that was the strike on St. Porphyrius Church. St. Porphyrius Church, it's the 3rd oldest church on the planet, built in 1160. 2 of its halls were taken out by 4 Israeli missiles, allegedly targeting a Hamas command centre, despite knowing people were taking shelter there and people died. There were no fewer than 500 people in St. Porphyrius on the night that happened. The sniper incident, incidentally, happened at the Catholic Holy Family Church, and the daughter, a woman called Samar Anton, who was a Gaza church worker, literally worked in the church, was shot in the head by a sniper whilst helping her elderly mother across a courtyard to use the bathroom. The mother was then shot in the stomach. 2 women, one helping the other to the loo, gunned down. That's taking on Hamas, is it? They were a threat like that, were they? Avoiding unnecessary civilian deaths, are you? Don't insult our intelligence. These are the acts of genocidal maniacs, not soldiers. What Christians are left are sheltering what is left of the Catholic Church, already bombed as well, as the church school has been completely destroyed. And also, they're still sheltering in what remains of St. Porphyrius. The Baptist Church, incidentally, is disused and closed. So there are Christians there, and there are churches for them to worship in there. So what possible reason could Israel have for just blanket denying that? Convenience, basically. Any attack on Israel, any slight against Israel, any criticism of Israel, its conduct, its government, they play the victim. They play the race card. And the race card is a very easy one to play these days when so many of political leaders around the world are jumping up and down screaming anti-Semitism at anyone who dares blink at Israel in the wrong direction. If those are bombing are all just one religion, those they are bombing are all just one religion, and then Gaza is 99% Sunni Muslim. So by pretending that small number of Christians don't actually exist, it makes the narrative much easier to make out that the attacks on Israel, in this case from Hamas, by making them out that it is an attempt to wipe them out because they are Jews and because Jews have been historically persecuted. And we all remember the Holocaust. We should never ever forget it, and we should never ever condone anything that looks like a repetition of that. We should do all we can to ensure nothing like that ever gets repeated. Yet that is exactly what is being borne out with the scale of civilian deaths here, surely. Because these people are Palestinian, these people are Gazans, but making it all about Jews defending themselves from Muslims, a narrative a lot of right-wing rags and other media around the world are happy to carry, because Islamophobia doesn't seem to matter to some, doesn't exist in the minds of others. It isn't just Jews against Muslims. This isn't a religious conflict at all, no matter how some might try and paint it as such. It's all about justification for Israeli atrocity, but the shooting of 2 innocent Christian women has blown such thinking wide open, and in majority Christian countries, such as here in the UK, that has got people saying, well, that could be us if we were there. They wouldn't treat us any differently, would they? And that is something Israel will find itself very hard to defend itself from. We are coming up on Christmas right now, Christmas Day, less than a week away, when we remember the pilgrimage of Mary and Joseph from Nazareth in the north of Israel to Bethlehem, today an occupied city in the West Bank. To get there today, the least of Mary and Joseph's problems would be shelter for the night. It would be the 30 checkpoints and the border wall they'd have to navigate. Don't imagine because you're Christian it'd be any easier for you to follow in those footsteps in this day and age. Churches and mosques alike are being targeted, as this video here explains. So watch that next if you'd like to know more on this, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.